All right. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Aubrey Sahuria. I'm the current president of UNI's Psychi chapter, and I'm here with Dr. Ganter, who is a professor of biology and teaches a lot of our neuroscience students here at UNE. So Dr. Ganter, if you'd like to start by just kind of telling us what you do at UNE.
Sure. So I'm a professor in the School of Biological Sciences, and so I teach some freshman biology this semester in that school, and I also teach in the School of Behavioral and Social Sciences in the Neuroscience program, and I'm also currently teaching Introduction to Neurobiology. It's my 20th year at UNE, and I run a small research enterprise, a lab studying pain using fruit flies as a model system, and a number of other things. I sit on a lot of committees as well, but that's basically who I am and what I do.
Very nice. Congratulations on your 20th year.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
We're glad to have you. So the first question I have for you is, what are some of the options for somebody who's about to graduate with a bachelor's in neuroscience or is looking forward to graduating with one?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of options. I'm sure that no one watching this video would be surprised that one of those options is to go to medical school or any health professions type of career, like maybe physician assistant or dental school or vet school. So the neuroscience curriculum is designed to prepare students for all of those sorts of medical clinical careers. And then there's certainly the possibility of a research career. So research in the neurosciences could be academic research, sort of like what I do, and maybe many of your other UNE professors involved in academic research. Some academic research is with a university and some is with more of a research institute. So in some cases, a career in neuroscience research may mean teaching courses, and in some cases it may mean there would be no courses, only research. And then there's, of course, what we would call the industry. So going to work for pharmaceutical companies or other biotechnology industries. That's another possible career path for folks in the neurosciences, and probably many others that I'm not thinking of. I'm a big believer in. I'm a believer that career paths are not always straight. Sometimes they kind of twist and turn as opportunities arise. I'm an example of that. I studied plant biology before I became a neuroscientist. So you just kind of never know what's going to happen. And I encourage everyone to be open-minded and consider all their options.
I could definitely appreciate that. I'm going to be graduating with my BS in neuroscience. I'm going to go and pursue a PhD in psychology. So twisting and turning.
Yeah, we figure it out as we go, I think.
Exactly.
It's good to be flexible.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of, choosing a degree, kind of going where the wind takes you, what kind of degrees are out there? I know there's a master's and PhD, and how would one start looking for those?
Those are kind of the typical graduate degrees for someone who might be headed for any of those research careers that I just mentioned. There's also the possibility of MD, PhD. So folks who might be more interested in clinical applications could also still kind of have a science qualification by pursuing an MD, PhD. So it's kind of a joint program. Or you could get both degrees, an MD and a PhD. I have heard people say that an MD, PhD is to have that degree is to have neither an MD nor a PhD. But in some cases, it's probably less like that. And again, you can always have you could legitimately pursue both degrees. How to find these? Well, the web, of course, the best place to start your search. Um, One thing I recommend for folks going into graduate school is to, if you have an idea about a topic that you're passionate about, um, to look through the literature and find out who are the researchers who are making progress in that topic. Um, and that will give you ideas about where to apply for graduate programs. I think in this kind of a career path, it's almost like you're choosing a mentor rather than a program. Um, certainly you're choosing the program as well, but the connection that you make with your research mentor is going to be very close connection. You're going to spend a lot of time with them and with their staff. And really, you kind of depend more on them than on the program itself in many ways. So those are things to keep in mind. You may find a great mentor in a part of the country or world that you don't want to live in, or in a program that you wouldn't want to associate yourself with, and that might be going a bit far. Hopefully you find a balance of those factors. But again, since you're going to be really immersing yourself in a particular field of study, I think it's worth starting your search there, looking for scientists doing the kind of work that really excites you, and then apply to the programs that they're connected with, and even reach out to them and say, if I were accepted to this program, would you consider me doing a rotation in your lab or joining your group? And it's okay to be bold like that. And that can be a good way to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who are seeking some sort of, post-undergrad degree, what is kind of like the bird's eye view of the progression that they follow? So they get accepted, and then what?
Get accepted to a graduate school. Um, well, so we've been talking about a couple of different levels of training to start with. One question your viewers might be asking themselves is, do I want to start with a master's degree and then go on for a PhD degree? Or do I want to immerse myself immediately in a PhD degree program without first doing a master's? And both of those tracks are generally possible. It's often not necessary to apply to a PhD program having already had a master's. And so that's a question I think is going to be on a lot of people's minds. And I just want to weigh in on that real quick. If you are absolutely sure that you want to pursue a career in research, and that the PhD degree is something you feel like you're just going to inevitably have, then I think it's fine to apply to those programs, directly. If you have any doubts about it, especially if you have not had the opportunity to get a lot of research experience in your undergraduate life, then it might be a good idea to start with a master's degree, just to make sure. A PhD degree is a long commitment. It's usually on the order of 4 to 7, 8 years for me. And so, it's good to be pretty sure. It is possible, if you start a PhD degree and change your mind a couple of years into the program. Many programs do allow an exit called mastering out, where if you have passed your qualifying exams in your PhD program and then decide to leave the program, you would leave with a non-thesis master's degree, and you wouldn't have to go through the process of defending a thesis. So there are off-roads for those who start a PhD degree and then change their mind. But in general, I think it's a good idea to make sure you've got a lot of research experience under your belt before you apply to a PhD degree. Ask me how I know. I failed to do that. I went to a college for my undergraduate degree that did not offer research experiences. And so I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Luckily, it worked out. But that was scary because if I had made a bad decision, then I think I would have been really confused about what to do. So your pathway could start, after graduation, going in directly into a PhD program, or it could include going to a master's and then a PhD. I also want to say, even if you're pretty sure you want to go into science, it's not a bad idea to get a master's degree first. Some people say, well, if I'm going to go through a thesis, experience, why don't I just, save that for the PhD degree? Why would I go through that twice? And I would say it's not a bad experience to go through twice. Writing a thesis is really, really beneficial and informative. And if the first one you write is your PhD, I mean, you're still going to be fine, but everything you learn in the master's process will really benefit you in the PhD process. You'll maybe be in a better position to choose a good project. It would be a good time to change your lab situation, apply to a different program. Maybe you didn't get into the PhD program of your dreams, but you get into a good master's program. You could go ahead, finish that, and then reapply for a PhD, and then maybe get into the program of your dreams. So there's different strategies there. So again, if you're bent on a career in research, either industrial or academic, you might be considering following up your PhD degree with a postdoctoral training period. Maybe a little less common in industry to pursue postdoctoral training before getting a job in the industry. In academia, it's pretty common. A postdoctoral period it's a non-degree training period following your PhD. And usually they range from 3 to 5 years. Some people do one postdoc, some do two, some do many more. There is a bit of a stigma with doing a lot of postdocs. It makes it look like maybe you are not qualified to move on to that next stage in your career, which might be an assistant professorship somewhere. But some people do happily do a lot of postdocs and then figure it out after that. So a postdoctoral training period is an opportunity to kind of fine tune the trajectory of your training. Maybe in your PhD training, you found some things that you're really curious about, and you want to you're going to head in that direction, but you may not have specific training in that particular field, and you need maybe some new techniques, maybe work with a new mentor. And so the ability to switch directions a little bit during a postdoc is a good strategy. And then usually, again, if you're going into academia after one postdoc or maybe more, then you're going to be applying for jobs at universities. Mostly people are trying to get what we call tenure track jobs, which are professorships that benefit from this practice called tenure, which basically is kind of a guaranteed job for life, which is a really nice type of job security, unless your university closes its doors, or you're convicted of a major crime. Then you're going to probably be able to keep that job for life until retirement if you want it. This is it's a custom that helps preserve academic freedom. Professors are often people with strong opinions, and so this practice evolved to prevent professors feeling like they can't speak their minds because they might be fired by their institution. So for better or worse, there is still tenure out there, and it is something people are seeking. That's not to say that you can't have a great career in a non-tenure track position, but it is a little less. It's a lot less common for people in non-tenure track positions to have the liberty to do a lot of research. Usually, they do very little, if any at all. So if you're looking for a career in teaching, then either of those tracks would be fine. If you're looking for a career that involves research, then you're probably looking at a tenure track academic position. So yeah, that's kind of like the training trajectory for a lot of research situations. I don't know as much about industrial research because that's not the direction I went in. Things are probably a little different there than I've described, and there, of course, there's no tenure, things like that in the industry. I could say though that it's at least it's my impression that there's your choice of whether to go into industry or academia might also depend a little bit on the type of freedom that you have to pursue the questions that you're interested in. I guess a lot of people feel like academic researchers are more free to kind of decide what questions they want to ask and the direction that they want to go in scientifically, whereas industrial researchers are really bound by the marketable product that they're producing, and so they have to work on something that's going to make a profit for their company, because that's how industry works. On the other hand, generally the company that you work for in industry is ready to support you with whatever materials that you need to succeed with your project. Whereas in academia, you're going to have to kind of attract funding in order to ask the questions that you want. Generally, the university doesn't fork over a lot of money and say, here, do whatever you want. You're going to have to argue with the university for support to some extent, and then you're going to have to compete for grants to support your research, and that can sometimes be grueling. It can also be really rewarding too. So that's something else to think about. Am I hitting the high points, Aubrey?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of familiar points from when I was starting to poke around about PhD programs, which
Yeah.
feels good. So I have a couple more questions for you. So you had mentioned that you started out with plant biology, and you've now been teaching biology and neuroscience side by side for 20 years. Can you say maybe how you got to that point, and maybe one of the things that you wish you had known?
How did I get to this point, and what do I wish I'd known? I'll answer that second question first, because I've kind of already alluded to it. My biggest regret is not getting any experience in research early on in my career. Like I say, it turned out well for me, but it might not have. It's hard to choose a career path, right? Especially when you're young and you haven't really had the time to get a lot of experience. My younger son is a high school senior right now, and he's trying to choose like a college major, and I'm like, I don't know. How do you know? I think the best way to make decisions about your path in life are to try things, but that takes time, and you got a lot of other things that you want to do. So I would say if you're contemplating a career that involves research, that you really got to try it. You got to help out in someone's lab for as much time as you can carve out while still, getting good grades, because you got to qualify to get into these programs. But the experience is also really invaluable for preparing you for that experience, and also just helping you make that decision when it comes time to decide. So I can't stress that enough. And especially if you have the ability to swing it, to try to spend some full time doing research, like in a summer or over a holiday break or something. Even a few weeks of full-time research where you're not distracted by classes and other things on your plate will give you a sense of what that would be like to pursue that career. A lot of students who spend 10 hours a week on a project, I think they mostly remember the frustrations that they had trying to get their project to work. If you were working, 40, 50 hours a week, you would find that all the frustrating things, you kind of work those out much more quickly, and you would probably remember the high points of the research, the triumphs that you had. So it's a lot less frustrating when you have more time. And so a part-time research experience is not as good as a full-time research experience. So see if you could, it's better than none, trust me, but it's see if you can find a way to get full-time research experience as well. How did I end up where I am? It was by just being open to possibilities. So I did not, again, I did not know what to do when I graduated from college. I hadn't had any research experience. I had a fuzzy idea that I wanted to be a college professor. I hadn't really done any teaching. The one experience I did have was kind of, I was a TA for an anatomy and physiology lab. So I had a tiny bit of like exposure to what teaching might be like. And so I was like, I guess I'll try this. And so I got involved in a PhD program, went to Boston College. And I did not choose the program for the mentor. I just chose a program that would accept me. And then I chose the mentor, and I chose a mentor, but basically based on the project that she was doing. And it was about plants, and I was kind of squeamish about working with animals. And sometimes you got to sacrifice animals when you're a neuroscientist. And so I kind of went that direction. I learned a lot about DNA. I was a molecular biologist. I learned a lot of molecular biology and biotechnology doing that. But when I was finishing up my PhD, I was like, I don't want to work for a seed company. I don't want to work, in agriculture. And so I was really kind of didn't know what to do. But then one day we had a guest lecture from a guy working on the lobster nervous system. Lobsters, I said lobsters. And he was very captivating and engaging, and he hired me. So I went off, and it didn't hurt that he was at Harvard Medical School, and that would mean I did not need to like change cities or anything, because I was at Boston College, and the Harvard Med's just down the street. And I was like, all right, sign me up. I'm like, I know nothing about neurobiology, but I was captivated. And so I just kind of threw myself into that as a postdoc. And so, like I said, postdoc is a chance to kind of adjust the trajectory of your career. I used it to make a huge change to the trajectory going into neuroscience. So do I recommend my methods to anyone? No. But I would hope that some of your viewers might benefit from my hindsight and the mistakes that I made, if you want to call them that. And I've had a very fun career. I've enjoyed every bit of it, but it was certainly not a straight path. And there, you might argue that, who knows where I would be if I had, chosen this path more directly, but I've loved it. So that's my advice, is to just, if you're trying to figure out what to do, try some stuff, shadow people, intern if possible, spend as much time trying out those possibilities and seeing what that life might be like. And then you'll feel, I think, a lot better prepared to decide.
Thank you so much. That's invaluable advice. I feel like a lot of us who are nearing the end of our undergraduate degrees are thinking, oh my gosh, like I might like veer off to a path and I'll have to completely start over. And that doesn't seem to be the case.
I didn't have to start over. But did it slow me down? Yeah, probably. But that's okay. You can catch up.
Here you go.
Especially if you choose something you're really passionate about, then I think you're going to be good at it. So you can catch up for sure.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for dedicating part of your afternoon to talking with us about grad school. And
Well,
been
of
for
course.
Alzheimer's.
Thank you for the invitation, Aubrey. I enjoyed this.
Of course. Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Okay. Take care.
You too.